Hi HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners. Today's guest is Olivier van Urk. Olivier is the HR Director Europe for C.H.Robinson. Olivier, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's a pleasure to join you.
Fantastic, great to have you on the show. Olivier, fill in the gaps. Tell HR leaders a little bit about yourself and your journey to becoming the HR Director Europe at C.H.Robinson.
Well, that actually starts with really the beginning when I was actually finishing my studies in business administration. I chose the field of HR to specialize in, but I made one very important promise to myself, and that is that I would never work in HR. That was really the one thing that I promised myself, but I was very much involved in organization design. I really felt that you can make a difference in companies if you're involved in that part of knowledge. So that's why I wanted to finish my studies in that field, and the HR direction was the most, I said that the part of the study that gave the most knowledge about it. And so that was a firm promise that I made to myself. And then I obviously started my career with an HR background and an HR degree. And obviously I got a job within HR. And I felt, well, maybe it's a good way to kickstart my career and get involved. I started as a recruiter for a company today is called Tata Steel. But through that role, I got the opportunity to see basically every aspect of the company. I wasn't just recruiting people in the factory, but also people at the sales department, in the finance department, or at their laboratory. And so a very wide range of people. And through that whole path, what I realized is that HR is of course everywhere. It's involved in any part. So when I made a next career change and actually joined a different company in the Netherlands, it's called POM. I started out as the right hand of the HR director. And again, I kept telling myself, well, I'm still in the vicinity of HR, but I'm going to do something different within HR. I won't be an HR manager. I kept that promise for a long time for myself until a certain point within that POM company that they actually told me, well, Olivier, you've been a project manager within HR. You've been around for quite some years. You can be a smart ass every now and then about how things need to be done. Why don't you do it yourself? So reluctantly, I said, yes, okay, I'll become one of the HR managers, only to find out, even after just a couple of months, this is a great job. There is so much that you can do. There's such a unique impact that you can have on the business. And it's really a unique position. And it wasn't until that very time in my career that I realized, hey, this is really what I want to do. This is also something that I really want to be good at. That was also part of the question that I got during my career is that, Olivier, what is it that you really want to be good at? And so when I stepped into that role, that's where I found out, well, this is exactly the kind of impact that I want to have. This is exactly the way that I want to be part of a company where on the one hand, you can make such an impact on an individual, but you can also make such an impact on how the company is designed, how it's working, diving into the details of the business model itself. And that's a great passion of mine. Mm-hmm. And what I realized as a project manager, where I thought, well, I'm doing projects and therefore I'm making change, everything went extremely slow. And now as an HR manager, I realized, hey, but I can actually make those decisions myself. I can go forward so much faster. And my lines are so much more direct with the company. And so that's where the true passion for HR came forward. And then I got the opportunity to join C.H.Robinson as their HR director for Europe, which basically they asked me to completely redesign the HR organization for Europe as the European organization was transforming from more an area where it was a courtesy to US customers to service them in Europe. At that point of time, it was said, well, it's actually a standalone business within the corporation. So it should also have its own infrastructure like HR, legal, marketing, etc. So that was a great opportunity to really design and build the HR team exactly the way that I felt is right. And to be honest, that wasn't something I knew up front that much, but they really gave me sort of a blank card, as in you design what needs to be done, and you take care of that. And that was a thrilling experience. So it's a joy to be in this role today. Absolutely.
It's fantastic. And it's to the last point you just mentioned, it's very rare that you get that opportunity as well to really create something from the ground upwards, and gives you that sort of freedom to innovate, to create, and to set that sort of strong foundation for the future success. And that must have been very interesting, also very challenging.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you can just do whatever you want. No, you still have a business that is expecting certain results and a certain also service and support. And it also doesn't mean that I completely redid everything that was already there. There was an HR team already working there, which was doing a fantastic job. It was more about how it was organized and also with which aim it was working, for that matter. I think it's extremely important, if you have an HR team, that it's very aware of its added value and how to bring added value to the company. And that's really a mindset that I really wanted to bring forward in the team here at C.H.Robinson.
What are some of the lessons that you learned for other HR leaders going through a similar process that you went through when you joined? What are some of the sort of lessons that you learned that you feel that were valuable looking back, reflecting on that?
Well, the most important part, if you go about also forming an HR team or redesigning an HR team, it's very important that you understand the business. And when I say understand the business, it's really about asking a very simple question. And that is, do I understand why it is that we make money? It's maybe a very simple question. Yeah. But if you can answer that question, you understand what it is that the business actually does. Often in forums about HR, there's talk about HR needs to talk the language of the business. But then usually the question is also, but what is the language of the business? Well, ultimately, if you can answer why you're making money as a company, you talk the language of the company and the business. So it's all about understanding the business model. And if you understand the business model, you need to understand what are then the drivers within that model. And if you understand the drivers of that model, you can identify what are the variables that I can change and impact on from an HR perspective to make that difference, to change the outcome that we're aiming for. If you start that conversation, you talk the language of the business. Don't worry about it.
So what steps did you take to understand the wider business and those requirements?
Well, you need to dive into it. So you literally need to dive into it. You need to experience it yourself. One extreme nice wake-up call that I had is so basically what we do, we are a broker in logistics, if you will. Yeah. It means that we have teams that as a broker actually are on the phone continuously. They have big screens in front of them. And so there are loads that need to be booked on carriers. So they're on the phone calling carriers, so those are owners of trucks, calling them and asking them whether they have capacity to set it. That sounds sort of okay, like that you continuously just keep on pushing, and in time you'll find somebody. But the difference is that what you need to understand in our business is there's a lot also based on relationship and trust. So I spent a full day trying to get one load booked, and which is extremely easy if I look within the teams.
So you did the job basically.
I did the job myself. I was on the phone and I spent the whole day on the phone, and I wasn't able to book just one simple load. And then at the agony of the end of the day, the branch manager of the branch that I was working at that point, and basically came by and asked me about the load that I was trying to book, and then asked me which carrier was the last carrier that you called. So I showed the number. He called the exact number, got exactly the same person on the phone, explained that he needed to book a load, and the load was booked.
Wow.
So what was going wrong there? I was somebody calling from C.H.Robinson, and that was the relationship part. Sure. So relationship is extremely important part of our organization, and building the trust with our carriers and also our customers for that matter. And so it's a two-side where you need to build the trust. So it's not that easy. It's not as if, okay, just as long as I push in a lot of people, and then with time and quantity, you'll get the loads booked. There's more to it. That's something that you need to understand. That's a very important factor in that business model. How do you build those trust relations? How can you improve them indeed? But then you also need to ask questions in terms of, so how can I speed up that process? How can I make that more easy? What can I do from an HR point of view to facilitate building that trust, for instance?
Fantastic.
So those are typical questions that you need to ask yourself.
No, of course. Yeah. But you wouldn't have been able to have that insight without doing it, right?
It starts with just doing it, and that's actually what I learned from being a recruiter. When I was a recruiter, I always asked whether I could just be around a facility where I needed to recruit somebody, so that I could understand what is the surrounding. And it's also what I tell within my own team. We have a recruitment team as well. If they need to recruit somebody, they at least have to be at the branch just once, so that they know the context. And as a recruiter, you're also selling a job.
Sure.
But if you're selling something that you don't know what it's about, very difficult.
It's not going to work, is it?
And you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, right? So that's it's getting acquainted with what's going on. That's very important. That's one part. The other part, which I think was also very important in what I did, is that the first friend that I made within the company was the CFO. For the simple reason,
it's not a bad friend to have.
Sorry,
never a bad friend to have in any company.
No, exactly. Yeah, but and he has so much information, right? I mean,
sure.
he knows everything, and so I made it really an effort into it, making sure that he would become my friend, and that on a regular basis that we would sit down and discuss what's going on, and not just going through all the figures. That's also part of it, but also getting into trust. Building the trust relation, where we also were philosophizing about what is actually going on with those numbers. What's the background to it? What is it that he knows? What is it what I know? And let's combine that information. He's a very important partner for me in what I do.
In my career, the most successful HR leaders that I speak to are the ones that have built those relationships internally. You can't simply go into an organization and make changes. You need to spend, at least the first 6 months to a year building trust in your organization with the stakeholders before implementing those changes, because you need that support and commitment from them, and also, as you said, to understand both sides of the spectrum.
Well, but it's also important that you build for yourself the knowledge and the understanding in order to be able to position the company itself. And what is it that we do? How do we stand in the industry? So yes, we work in logistics, but everything, how we've set up our company, is completely contrary to how traditional logistics companies are built. Everything is literally different. And the average age in our company is extremely low compared to other in the transport and logistics companies. The level of education is very high. All employees are between bachelor and master's degree that are employed. When it comes about gender, it's 50-50. There's a very nice distribution. If you compare that to other logistics companies in the industry, we're completely different. But it also means that everything that we do when it comes to talking to future employees and also talking to our current employees is also different. Everything that we do, for that matter, is about doing it differently, for that matter. And that's something that we need to understand. If I compare our company to other companies, I usually compare it to more the tech kind of companies or even startup companies. We are much more associated to startup companies, even though we're over 110 years old, than we are with the traditional logistics companies. Yeah.
Well, that's something that many of your competitors are now trying to do, to turn back the wheels and bring that culture so they can move faster as well. So it's fantastic that you've already built that into your own culture and the business. Is that something that you've made a conscious effort to focus on?
Well, of course, a large part of it was, of course, already here when I joined. So I'm not going to take any credit on that. Absolutely not. But it was a very important aspect to understand. I remember when I just joined C.H.Robinson, one of the comments coming from the business is that we really need to work on the turnover of employees that we have, which was felt to be at a very high rate. But when I looked into what is the setup of our company, what is it that makes us successful? A lot of it is dependent on the decision power that we brought to desk level. And in order to make those kind of decisions that at the desk level need to be made, and we need to have highly educated people that can analyze in a short time frame a lot of information and then make the right decision. What we also need are people that have a certain eagerness and drive. So they need to be entrepreneurs, for that matter, and willingness to go that extra mile from internally motivated. Well, these are all characteristics that also lead to the fact that once they've worked with us for about 2 years, they will go to their manager and say, now I want to be the manager because I know how to do it.
Yes.
And in some cases, they're actually right. But at the same time, because we delegated a lot of decision power in the company, we're also a very flat organization. So by definition, there are not extremely amount of opportunities to grow into a next level position. And that is sort of a conflict with the characteristics that we typically recruit. But then the question is, okay, are we then willing to change those characteristics for people that will have less ambition, if you will, less drive? No, because that's not our success factor, right?
No, of course not.
So having this level of turnover is actually acceptable, but it's all about positioning it the right way. It's a relative figure.
Yeah, I've experienced that, obviously not on a scale like your own, but I've experienced that as a sales director in my last role. That the high performing sales guys in my team, after 2 years, 3 years, they want to leave to do something themselves, or because there's only so many sales director roles in the business.
Exactly.
There's only so many roles you can have. And I think as a young manager, looking back now, I didn't see it that way because I would always recruit people with a similar skill set to yourself. I was always hiring on attitude rather than, the skills that came out of it. And even some of those one of those is in this building. One of those team members is in this building that I'm in right now. He's a CEO of a huge organization, a marketing business, and it's quite funny to see that. And because if you recruit those people, you have to understand that at some point they're going to outgrow you, and they're going to take over.
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, what I would like to, the ambition that I see around it is that I rather see C.H.Robinson as a platform for young talents to grow into logistics careers where they build a solid foundation right here at C.H.Robinson. That's a huge opportunity. So the only question that I had for the business is, do we feel that we're not attractive for young talents to join our organization? Because if that's the case, then that's also where our problem is. It's not about the turnover itself. That is a result of how we set up things and how we've made our business successful. Don't change that now. That's not what we need to change. What we need to figure out is, do we have the capabilities to recruit the right people at the right time on a continuous basis? So what is it that makes us attractive? And that's also a thing that we talk about. One of the things that we're very proud of within C.H.Robinson, if you look at our leadership team, the vast majority of people in leadership roles have grown from within. That's a very strong aspect. Yet at the same time, what we need to realize is that those are the lucky few that, in a way, that really made it. And there's not we don't have thousands of managers. That's not how it works with us. So it means that is something that we need to keep and that we need to embrace. Yet at the same time, we still need to make it appealing for those that do have all the skill sets, but to become and grow into a next role, but at the current time don't have the opportunity within our organization to make that step. Well, then we should be proud that they make that step at a different employer. And who knows, they'll start working with one of our customers. That's only good, right? Exactly.
That's exactly what I was about to say. And also it reflects great on you for new employees to see where those individuals have gone on to and where their career started, right? It's just a direct reflection of how fantastic the business is as well.
Exactly.
So, I see it's a conflict. I completely understand that, but I think if you look at the positives, they definitely outweigh the negatives.
Absolutely, yeah. But this is also important, and then we talked earlier about looking at the business model and understanding what are the drivers and what is it that I can tweak and change. So one of my challenges is to keep looking into so how many years are people actually employed, and then when they're employed, how long does it take for people to become at a certain level of productive, if you will, and what is it that we can do to speed up that process? And there's a lot of things that we can do, and that's exactly where we invest in, whether it's training, experience, exposure, it's all of the above, building those relationships. Typically, we say building a relationship costs a lot of time. But if people stay with you maybe 2 or 4 years, you don't have all that time to build those relationships. So you need to give them greater exposure in order to build that trust.
So what are some of the things that you're doing to specifically fast track that from the very beginning recruitment phase?
Yeah, so one of the things what I think is a really powerful instrument within C.H.Robinson, and it's actually very old-fashioned, but I've seen it at other companies where they have been hesitant in doing that. Any employee that starts with our company, whether it's in Barcelona, in Milan, in Warsaw, they all come to Amsterdam for the first 2 weeks of their employment. And in those first 2 weeks, we train them on anything that we work on. So obviously we work with our own software. So it's a unique tool that you need to learn how to work with it. But in those 2 weeks, we also teach you everything about what is C.H. Robinson about, what is our culture, how do we do typically things, and even goes as far as into what is it that when we go to the office, what are we wearing? I'm one of the few people that's actually wearing a jacket, and I put it on for this show. And normally yeah, exactly. As soon as it's over, this will be out. But it's also about, I think that's very important. If you onboard people, it's not just about telling people this is how we do business, but it's also telling people about this is who and what we are. This is where we come from. Giving you the why of the business. Exactly. Yeah, and this is why we are also successful. But indeed, the Simon Sinek why is extremely important in that part. Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And taking the time to do that. So what I've learned in the past is when you want to onboard people, managers were often talking about, but then my employee is going to be away for 2 weeks. That's not why I recruited that person. But I see that as a 2-week investment.
Yeah, of course.
Will give you somebody coming back, hitting the ground running, being more productive as they come in. And that's exactly, I think, a very important factor to increase that speed. But from there, you can also start looking into, okay, so what is it from that training that I can emphasize and make even more specific to increase that knowledge in a faster pace?
Is that for all levels, by the way? Is that for all entry levels of the business, right from
all employees,
all the way up to senior management?
We also send our senior management to this training for the simple reason they also need to understand how the training, how the software at least works. But it's also that exposure to who and what we are as C.H. Robinson. So it's a great introduction as well. We always do it right here at Amsterdam for the simple reason that the leadership team is also based in here, and it allows the leadership team to just step in, say hello, and demonstrate literally that there are no boundaries. The part of our success is that we have very short lines. And so if somebody cannot make a certain decision, that person needs to be able to reach out to anybody to get a decision for that matter. If we waste time in going through the hierarchy to find out if we can do something or not, we lose the business.
You lose,
So, but that also means that as a leadership team, you need to walk the talk and show that the lines are short, and therefore we walk into those kind of sessions and say, hey, hello, how are you doing? Let's have pizza. Sometimes we have pizza for lunch.
I think what's great about that as well is that you're communicating with other people in different departments that you wouldn't normally do, because if you went straight into your traditional role on day one, you're never going to meet those other future leaders that could be in the business. And in terms of innovation, being able to communicate across different departments to get that different feedback. You've already started those conversations from day one, which is pretty amazing.
Exactly, yeah. Well, and part of the, also again, the business model, we work what we call as a network. It's all one company, but each office, the 45 offices that we have in Europe, all work together as a network. They're all attached through that software. They all have visibility on what they do, but it also means that you need to build your relationship within the network itself. And that starts from day one when you join, or we call it the jumpstart. And when you join the jumpstart training, because in that training, you'll meet people from other offices immediately. And those are your buddies from day one. And that's your first step into a network.
Not bad. Fantastic. It's not something I heard a lot, to be honest. It's quite unique. Maybe I just haven't asked the right questions, but seems like a perfect idea for any organization. What I've seen at other companies, it's typically something that people are afraid of because they see the time investment. But it's difficult to make very tangible what is then the return. Although I disagree with that because I think that return can be made very visible.
And at the same time, it's also within our company still a debate. Should it be 2 weeks? Can we bring it down to 1 week? And there's a yes and a no to that. And you need to be smart about that.
There's certain things in business, unfortunately, you can't measure, and I think to a certain extent. And I think I personally, and obviously you agree, that is definitely a worthwhile investment to have that week.
I think it's a great investment, but I do feel that I also have the responsibility to keep looking into the training and see if I can reduce the time, but still keep the output of that training. Mm-hmm. Then I'm benefiting to the company. Mm-hmm. That is already also a contribution to our result. So I do continuously look into ways of speeding up, if you will, that training, yet at the same time maintaining the level of output. You still want to have the same result. Well, so one great example that we already found is that there are certain parts of the training that if people take those parts of the training just before they join the Jumpstart itself via e-learnings, and that the effect of that is that whilst in training, the connection is even higher, meaning that the other part of the training the output of that is even higher than we have today. So that's actually an investment that will by the way, we need to invest in e-learnings for that. But if we put that in place, then we reduce the time of the training itself, whilst the output is even expected to be higher. Well, that is a way that I want to be smart about these kind of things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you're constantly re-looking at it and constantly trying to find out how can we always look at it, always improve this.
Yeah. Well, obviously in HR, you're never done, right? Your work is never over.
Well, that's what's exciting. That's what's exciting about HR.
Exactly. I mean, and I sometimes joke that if the business goes well, you're very busy in HR. If the business doesn't go well, you're very busy in HR. You're always going to be busy in HR. Yeah.
Well, that's what whenever I speak to HR leaders and they say, I don't want to say complain, but say, I'm so busy. Like, you should probably be worried if you're not busy. That's I know more about if I
fully agree.
If I call a HR leader and they tell me they're not busy and they can speak for the next 3 hours, and normally I get quite concerned. Very rarely happens, if I'm honest. So
absolutely.
So thank you very much for sharing that. Moving forward to where we are now, what really is sort of occupying your mind on a day-to-day basis?
Well, today the biggest challenge that I'm looking into myself is how do you? I mean, everybody's talking about HR analytics, right?
Yeah.
It's that's a hot topic. So surprise, that's also something that we work on. But what I find truly fascinating is how do you combine the HR analytics with the analytics of your company itself, for instance, productivity. So one of the things that I'm building as we speak is, and I'm not doing it myself, and I'm working together with an external company to help set it up. But I want to create a dashboard for our managers in the field, which show them their monthly productivity, which we look at anyways. That's a typical dashboard that we look within our company and the business is looking at. But attached to that dashboard, I want to have the HR analytics tied into it. So if you see a change in your productivity, can you then relate that to a certain stage of somebody's career? And that's what I call what are the risk profiles, for instance. Mm-hmm. If productivity is going down and you can relate that to specific employees in your team that also have been with the company for a certain time and they're in the risk profile of leaving the company, there's actually an explanation what's going on. And there's also a heads up of what to expect in the next coming months. Mm-hmm. It's more probable that your productivity is actually going to go down even further as this person is getting ready to leave the company. So it allows you to have better insight on a monthly and a regular basis to intervene. Whether that is speeding up the process of saying goodbye to somebody, I mean, we need to be honest about this, or whether it's about doing an extra effort to keep somebody on board, at least it takes away the surprise. Oh, really? Are you leaving? I didn't see that coming. Right, but you want to have that related to also how are you doing on productivity, and why do I think that's so important? It immediately builds your business case as a manager. What is it that I want to do? How much worth is it to invest in a certain individual to either have it stay or maybe say goodbye? And I think that's very important information that you need to have. Or what is it that I can change in the circumstances for this individual in order to change the productivity? So all sorts of information is related to it. How far is this person in the development of all the trainings that we have available? Did this person finish all the e-learnings that we've made available? Is that person behind? And a manager today has all this information already available. It's just not connected.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to make the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And that should be brought back in one dashboard.
That's the hard part, getting it all into one dashboard. I think we already have all of these different, as you said, all of this information across multiple platforms, different departments.
Exactly.
Organization challenge now is putting it all together so you can have that predictive analytics and
exactly.
forecast, what's going to happen. Even at the last event we had at the Innovation Roundtable, something as simple as being notified that someone's updating their LinkedIn profile. Is a clear sign. It's a clear sign that someone's going to be leaving the business. If you could do that across the entire business automatically without having to manually see that.
But it also shows that what's important with that as well is that, and it also means that you need to change the mindset about people leaving the company or not. If you embrace the fact that people are leaving your company and accept the fact that they find other opportunities going forward and see that also as a positive, you can actually gain so much more out of it. But if we still keep it something, we can't really talk about that, and it becomes sort of a black box, and all of a sudden, exactly. Yeah, but that change of mindset is also important. I strongly feel that if you want to change the mindset on this topic, you first also need to feed people with information. And allow them to see what's going on, and also allow them to engage in those kind of conversations. We literally need to act normal about it.
It's quite a tough topic, though, wouldn't you agree? Because it's funny, now you say it, it seems like something that people should be proud of. If they're moving on, you should, as a business, should be supportive and also congratulate them, on the next step. But now it's so difficult, even for some of my team members. I've had those meetings where they bring it. You've obviously been there, where they bring you in the meeting room. They're going to tell you they're leaving. They're one of your superstars, and they feel so bad about it. And it's like we shouldn't make people feel that way. If they're moving on to a new career and a new journey, having
absolutely. And if you make that a guided process, if you will, where you can also plan the transition, for that matter, a lot more. It also means that the impact on your business is a lot lower. Mm-hmm. And so you can have, if you can, that allows you to control it. It also makes sure that you will start on time a recruitment process for replacement, whether that's from internally or externally. But the whole process of your talent planning can be adopted to these kind of conversations. Having a talent planning exercise in place only makes sense if you also manage how people are leaving the company, and taking control over what's happening. It doesn't mean that you can automatically reduce turnover, and in our case, it's not going to happen. But what is very important is that you can manage it. And for that, you need insight. And you need to change the mindset of it being a difficult or scary topic.
Yeah.
It's part of life.
How are you addressing that, then?
Well, again, first what I want to bring forward is the information about it, to show that, hey, what you actually see happening is a logical and repetitive behavior of people. So the vast majority, the vast majority of people that are leaving us, you can see the indicators, and so you can make it predictive. That if somebody is at a certain stage of their career within C.H.Robinson, you can predict, well, typically now this person is getting into the risk profile of leaving the company. And the majority will, and the minority won't. Well, that's fine. It's not that you pinpoint somebody, you are leaving the company, so now we need to talk. But it just gives you a heads up in terms of, okay, there's a risk profile, and now we need to address it. If we look at our customers and we place our customers into a risk profile, which is very common to do, nobody finds that strange, right? I mean, if you know that the typical life cycle of a customer is so many years, so if it's 3 years, after those 3 years, typically that customer will move away. You want to spend some effort on that, but you also want to understand, well, am I actually making money on that? On that customer. Maybe it's a good thing that the customer goes away. And there's also a reality. Well, just like that, we need to look also into our employee base and see, okay, what's happening in that employee base? What's the reality? And have the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And where, in terms of the different projects you're working on, could you share sort of a transformation you guys have been through, or a project that you're personally most proud of?
Well, one thing that I'm personally very proud of is something that happened within C.H.Robinson about 1.5 years ago. And basically, as a leadership team, on the one hand, we had our successes and we didn't have our successes. And the one thing that I noticed from HR is that when it came to our strategy, we had a clear strategy in place. Everybody knew what the strategy was about. But when it came about explaining that strategy, there were different opinions, if you will. Mm-hmm. And actually what I found is that each different director in our company had a different way of telling the strategy and how we were executing it. But what I also noticed is that we didn't know that of each other. As a leadership team, we weren't aware of the fact that we were sending out different messages. And that had a lot of effect on the successes that we had, but also the failures that we had. So at one point, I brought the whole team together and I confronted everybody with this fact that we're not aligned on how we communicate our strategy. There's nothing wrong with the strategy itself, but how we execute it and how we explain the execution, that is different. That's a whole different story. Well, the first reaction was, no, Olivier, that's nonsense. You're absolutely wrong. We don't know what you're talking about. And so then I invited everybody for a 2-day offsite, very traditional to go on a 2-day offsite. But I literally challenged everybody to prepare a presentation on the strategy and how it's being executed, and to really sell it to the other directors. We set up this Dragon Den kind of approach. And where everybody was also giving feedback on the sales pitch, if you will, the strategy. Mm-hmm. But that was the momentum that everybody listened to each other's stories on how they perceived the strategy and everything that is part of it. What are our strong points? What are our weak points? Even on those points, we had different opinions, and that made it extremely strong. That everybody realized, oh, wait a minute. Indeed, we're not aligned. Mm-hmm. And from there on, we started to, we basically identified 7 different projects to work on to basically clear up the execution of our strategy. And that had a huge effect.
Mm-hmm. So, is that something you've repeated as well?
So this became a monthly topic that always came back. So everybody had to come back, of course, with their projects. Everybody was working also together with other directors on certain projects. So you were always involved in a couple of projects at the same time. But it was all meant to make sure that we kept talking the same language, if you will. One of the projects was very typical, which was about building the storyline. What is the storyline of our strategy? Very important. And because that's exactly the storyline that we need to use when we talk internally about our strategy.
Yes.
And explain it to our employees. It's a very important part.
Yeah.
And so is that a role of HR? Yes, I think that's a role of HR to identify that problem and bring it forward. And then also facilitate the process in fixing it. But I also must pay a huge compliment to our CEO here in Europe, who also gave me the space to actually do that. So he literally said, you facilitate this process so that I can participate in that process. And that was a very strong decision by him.
Yeah. It allows everyone to sort of remain impartial then, doesn't it? When it's not being led by the CEO, because he also may not be delivering the same message. So it's great that he had that foresight to see that and take himself out of the equation and hand that over to yourself. That's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't see many CEOs taking that step. So that's obviously great that he did that.
And it's very important. Yeah, absolutely.
So what was the sort of impact that you saw from doing that and aligning the business?
I think the most important part is the consistency of how we execute our strategy, and how we bring that to all levels of the company. And well, we don't have that many levels as we're a very flat organization, so that's easy. But I think it's very important that in all regions we did talk the same language, and from it also came a lot of new insights in for instance, how we look at our market. And how we look at our different industries, how we set up pricing for the different market segments, etc. So a lot of spin-off also came from it, and that's due to all the different directors who are also involved in it. But I think that's really, really great. It really changed the way that we looked at how do we run our business.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And so where do you see now the sort of biggest area for improvement? I know you touched on it, the technology side. Is that where you would say that, or there are other areas that you feel? What other areas do you feel that you're sort of addressing right now?
Well, from a business point of view, our biggest challenge, I would say, is that our whole operation is based on building critical mass, as we call it. And the more critical mass that we can build in certain lanes that we're active in, the more successful we can be. And also the broader we can grow in our business. That comes from being extremely disciplined. And bringing that discipline. So the message that we delivered was also very much about that. But discipline also means that you need to be disciplined yourself and keep going on it. So on the one hand, we need to be patient on how this is growing. Discipline is also about having patience and not trying to jump into opportunities. And a typical example is that there's a very attractive customer coming by, but is setting conditions that are not really how we've designed it. Do you walk away or do you get that customer? And the opportunity will say, yes, let's get the customer. Whilst the discipline will say, no, we need to say, at this point in time, we need to say no. And it's very difficult to say no.
I can imagine. Well, look, that leads us quite nicely onto the quickfire round. Where I'm going to ask you sort of 5 questions, and you have no more than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers.
All right.
Are you ready?
I'll try to be disciplined about it.
No problem. What was the number one thing that was holding you back personally from becoming a senior HR leader?
I would say too loyal in previous roles that I've been in. Enjoyed it too much, but then also not allowing myself to move up because I wanted to finish something. Okay. I wanted to stay on. Yeah.
Fantastic. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Well, actually, I mentioned it before. It's really about the question that I got, what is it that you really want to be good at? And if you can answer that question for yourself, that will really help your career.
Fantastic. What's one book that you'd recommend to our audience and why?
It's on leadership, and it comes from George Kohlreiser. He's a professor at IMD. He's written the book Care to Dare on secure-based leadership. I think it's extremely inspiring on his vision on leadership. And I would really recommend it for everybody. Fantastic. It's a really strong book. Yeah.
What is it that you took away from it?
It's really about how you balance risk and security, not only at your business, it's also at home. The stupid thing is you draw a lot of lessons also about being a father. But that's ultimately, if you look at leadership, what is so extremely difficult or actually not difficult about leadership, it's also about being very normal and what you do at home and how you raise your children. Not that your employees are children, but the way that you approach it, how you give security, etc. That's how you can lead.
Fantastic. And could you share one internet resource that you use to increase your own personal productivity or stay up to date with current events?
Well, it's multiple, and I mean, obviously, I'm always looking whether there are new TEDx and presentations. Although I tend to keep going back to the Simon Sinek presentation, very old-fashioned maybe, but
yeah, I'll probably watch that.
But it's always a good watch show. But every now and then something new pops up, and I think that's great. LinkedIn is a great source as well, but also your podcasts, they're very interesting to look at. And I think it's not one source. You need to have multiple sources. And also gather a group of peers around you that are from other companies, build a trust relationship and get their insights to what you're doing yourself and what they're doing. Very important.
And what's one thing about your business that most excites you today?
I think it's primarily the fact that we are so different from being a logistics company. We are very much a tech company, and the level of technology that we have in our company. And sometimes I sort of joke and where I say we are a startup and a tech company who just happens to be in logistics. Yeah. But it positions the company when it comes to primarily the future competition that we need to work on. Look at an Uber or an Amazon and how they approach things. It's all about how they're interfacing with customers. That is all software driven. So it positions C.H.Robinson it's such a fantastic position to compete with these kind of developments. That it makes it completely different, and I'm really excited about it.
Well, you certainly opened up my mind to that as well, because traditionally, as you said, when you look at your industry, that's the complete opposite.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
you can't survive in that in that sense.
It's really refreshing, though, to hear you say that and talk about the business in that manner. So really thank you for that. You've obviously given us, our members, some actionable advice, so I really appreciate you doing that. Give our listeners a parting piece of guidance, and also sort of the best way to contact you if they wish to do so.
To contact me?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, what would be sort of your parting piece of guidance to other?
A parting piece of guidance. Well, I think it's very important if you work in HR, dare to speak up. And there is so much knowledge that you have available. The tools that we have available today, and the knowledge that we gain from that, puts you in a position that you can really make a difference within a company. Use that. Understand the business model, understand the drivers, understand the variables, but then use the knowledge that you have at your fingertips, and then speak up. I think that really makes a difference.
Yeah, it's something I've actually been hearing more recently now, having that courage to speak up. And someone even went as far as recently, you have to be willing to lose your job on a daily basis to make a real change in the business as well, which is pretty amazing. And if our members want to contact you, what would be the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, you can share my email address if you want with this podcast. No problem at all. I'm always open to connect with people. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn. Sure. And so I'm always open for connection. Either way, if you have questions, if you want my view on something, I'm very happy to share.
Fantastic. Well, again, really appreciate you taking some time to join us. Guys, make sure you head over to hrdleaders.com. There you'll find all of the show notes on the episode, everything we've been talking about. I'll link all of that in the description. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or iTunes if you want to just hear the audio. Again, thank you for joining us and sharing your journey with our members, and I wish you all the best until next week.
Thank you very much. It's truly a pleasure to be part of the show.